Hello everyone, today I want to learn about populations, communities, and ecosystems. What criteria help us to actually distinguish between these three concepts? So, populations and communities are groups of organisms. A population is a group of the same species living in the same area. For example, you look at this picture, you can see that there is only one species of fish, and we have four fish here, is the population of this species in a particular area. So a community is a group of different species living in the same area. So refer to this picture, we can see that not only fish, but we can see other species too, like coral reefs, we can see starfish. So just all of these species live together in a particular place. We call it a community where different species live, thrive, help, or eat each other too. And an ecosystem is all of the organisms, include non-living things or living things, in an area plus the non-living parts of the environment. So look at this picture. What else we can see from the community picture? We can see the water, we see the sand at the bottom of the ocean. We can also see the stone too, where the starfish based in. So how are all these concepts interact and relate to each other? Organisms interact with both living and non-living parts of the ecosystem. Organisms depend on the interactions in order to survive and have offspring. So I hope that through this key point and takeaways, you have a better sense of what populations, communities, and ecosystems are, and how they have a relationship and have in common with each other. So now let's come back to our quizzes, which help us to practice what we've learned. Right, so we have a small description of the picture and a following question. Banff National Park is located in the Canadian Rocky. I'm just kind of like checking whether or not I turn on microphone. Banff National Park is located in the Canadian Rocky Mountains. It is the oldest national park in Canada. The landscape of Banff National Park includes lakes and mountains. The park includes dense forests of lodgepole pines and eagleman spruce trees. In these areas, grizzly bears, elk, and porcupines make their homes, which term best describe a group of porcupines in Banff National Park. It is a population because just kind of like all the species living together in a particular place that share the same characteristic, they relate to each other. It is a population. Okay, which statement about paddlefish on a coral reef ecosystem is most likely true? Well, non-living things and non-living things and living things interact with each other to grow and to produce offspring. Yeah, so that's okay. Which of these illustrations best represents an ecosystem? In order to answer this question accurately, you need to recall the concept, the definition of ecosystem, which we've had just gone through earlier. An ecosystem is the combination of both living things and non-living things, the surroundings of all the creatures and all the animals and species. So it is C that best describes the ecosystem concept. Right, so another picture. The Namib National Park, comment down below if I'm mistaken this pronunciation, this national park, because maybe I mispronounced it, is located along the coast of Namibia. The park includes a desert ecosystem that gets most of its water from fog that blows in from the ocean. The dry environment is home to sandwinter snakes, hyenas, and beetles. The park is also home to welwitschia plants. These plants can live to be over 1,000 years old, which term best describe the snakes, beetles, and welwitschia plants in the national park. So if you notice closely enough, you will see that these three species are different and distinct from each other. So it is a community because we didn't kind of include the non-living things part, like the water and something like that. So it is a community. Right, so we are done with these concepts. Now, let's come to the resources and population growth. Right, so we've just discovered another concept, which is resources and population growth. So here's some key takeaways. Organisms in an ecosystem need resources to survive and multiply their offspring. Resources can be named as food, water, oxygen, and shelter or space. Organisms that get more resources are more likely to grow and produce offspring. And here we have the opportunity to expose to another concept which I think is unfamiliar with many of you. It is a limited resource. What is defined as a limited resource? A limited resource is one of that is not available in endless supply. As populations get bigger, limited resources can start to run out. When this happens, a population growth may slow or stop or even compete with each other species in order to have a spot for that water sources that are limited their population growth. It can be water, it can be space, or it can be food or energy. Organisms often need the same limited resources. This can lead to competition between organisms, which I've just explained to you earlier. Competition can happen between organisms of the same species or even different populations compete with each other to kind of like have the opportunity to drink water or eat that food, eat that water supply, and so much more. So it can also happen between organisms of different species. The size of a population depends on the amount of available resources. A population with more resources will likely to be larger than a population with fewer resources. So as you can see here, here's is the picture of two young seagulls compete for food. Right, so let's do some quizzes to help you understand better and reinforce your knowledge. Choose the best phrase to fill in the blank. Organisms that have few resources are less likely to survive to have offspring because the more resources you have, the more likely you will multiply and expand your generation, right? And it can assist your population's growth. So it's obvious that if you have more access to water supply, to food resources, you can eat that food to have energy to supply, right? So it is really obvious. A population with many resources will likely be larger than a population with few resources, which I've just explained alongside with the first question. Which statement about competition in ecosystems is true? Competition often occurs when resources are plentiful. Well, it doesn't make sense because if the resources are plentiful and available, then how come these communities, these organisms have to compete with each other for, right? Because these resources are available and they are enough to supply all these animals, then how did they need to compete with each other, right? It just doesn't make sense. So we can definitely eliminate this option. Organisms can compete with organisms of a different species. Yes, it is true. It doesn't only happen during the same population, but also happen during different species and animals too. Competition often occurs when organisms need different limited resources. No, it is B. What effect does a limited resource have on a population's growth? It will slow down the process of, multiplying, of producing the offspring, or the slow down the population's growth. Here. It's quite easy to be honest. Alright, so the next topic. Oh, let's do this quiz to sum up all the topics we've just learned so far, which is about populations, communities and ecosystems, and the resources and population growth. It only takes about 5 to 10 minutes, so yeah. Cabo Pulmo National Park is a protected marine area of the coast of Mexico. The national park includes saltwater rocks and sandy beaches. Under the water is a coral reef that is estimated to be 20,000 years old. The reef is home to many species of fish and sea snails. In addition, manta rays often visit the reef. Which term best describes a group of manta rays in Cabo Poma National Park? I kind of think it is a population because manta rays are the same species, right? Yeah. Okay. An organism with plenty of resources is more likely to survive compared to an organism with few resources. It's literally obvious. The graph below shows the size of a certain population of wolves has changed over time. 3 points are labeled on the graph. Of the 3 points, which one shows where the competition in the wolf population was likely the lowest? The lowest, guys. I think it is C because the more population you have, the more competition you will have to compete with each other to kind of get access to water supply or food, energy. So I think it's C. Oh, it's not? Let me rethink again. Or I think it's C. I think it's C because yeah, I get it now. I got it. Which statement about lemmings in a tundra ecosystem is most likely true? Lemmings live and grow by interacting with each. Which statement about populations is true? Oh my god, guys, I think I need to redo the quiz, whatever. Because I dropped the marks. I can answer the question about the population, about kind of the population of wolves, whatever. I forgot that, but anyway, never mind. The image below shows the woodland of ecosystem in Northern California in the United States. Which of the following competitive interactions most likely occurs in the woodland ecosystem? I think oxygen here is plentiful, so they don't need to actually compete for oxygen to breathe and for survival, so A is not true. Wait, can octree even compete with each other? It just doesn't make sense, you know? Yeah, I think C makes sense. Competition ecosystems is true. I remember that I had done this question before, so let's see. An ecosystem, it is C. Non-living things and both living things too. A scientist studied the size of 3 lizard populations. The scientist counted the number of lizards in each population once, and then again 12 months later. The data is shown in the table below. Which lizard population likely has the most resources during the 12 months between counts? It's clearly 2 because the population is the biggest, so they are likely to have more access to water supply to multiply their generation offspring. Oh my god, your screen time was up 11% last week. That's a lot. I need to restrict the time on screen right now because yeah, it just doesn't good for my health. It isn't good for my health, you know. It is unhealthy to just glue your eyes to the screen, and yeah, it is unproductive. Serengeti National Park is located in the northern part of Tanzania. The park is home to herds of wildebeest. These animals move through the park in search of grass and water. As they move, they must cross rivers where many are eaten by crocodiles. Wildebeest, grasses, and crocodiles. I think it's a community because we doesn't include the water here, which is essential in order to define the ecosystem. Okay, there we go. So we have one more topic to go. It is ecological interactions. So yeah, we'll see back in a few minutes. Oh my god, guys, I have to say that this topic is really amazing. It is so interesting. I really want to share with you guys a little bit. Alright, so today we're going to learn about competitive, predatory, and mutualistic interactions. So what are all these concepts about? It may sound really puzzling, but just with a few proof explanation. Yeah. Alright, so across all ecosystems, organisms interact in specific ways, and we have a total of 3 ways for organisms to interact with each other. First is competition. When competitive interactions happen, when organisms compete for the same set of resources, it can be in the same population, as I've just kind of like said earlier before in this video, or it can be different organisms compete with each other for water supply. Maybe the water supply is limited at that particular area, and all the organisms have to compete to each other in order to get access to the water supply. Then that is competition. Next, we have predation. Predatory interactions happen when one organism hunts and eats another organism. So I want to clarify here a little bit. Organism here is not only about living things, like when the bear hunts the salmon from the water, then it is called predation. It also when the buffalo eats grass, then the buffalo is actually killing the grass, and it is also a form of predation. Maybe it sounds kind of weird to think that way, but yeah, organisms and biology is really complicated, and it is a way for us to actually have practice our critical thinking and getting more details from the regular things that we've seen every day, and we haven't thought about that before. The organism doing the eating is a predator, and the organism being eaten is the prey. Next, the final one is the most interesting thing I've ever encountered in this whole topic about populations, about organisms, about ecosystems, something like that. It is mutualism. So mutualistic interactions happen when two organisms of different species benefit from each other by interacting. In some cases, organisms in a mutualistic relationship even require each other for survival. For example, we have a picture of 2 birds that are eating all the lice and ticks on a buffalo's head. So what are the mutualism happening in these cases? So when the birds are eating all the lices, eating all the ticks, they have the food supply to eat, and the buffalo also benefit from that action of predation from the birds eating all these prey, all the ticks and all the parasites. Is that the buffalo would not feel itchy, would not feel kind of like all these creatures sucking the blood anymore, and that is mutualism, when two organisms interact with each other to benefit each other. Right, so it's a little bit complicated, but let's just understand this a little bit from these quizzes. In a interaction, the organism of one species benefits, and the organisms of the other species also benefits. Remember, we have 2 organisms in this case benefit from each other by interacting. So maybe it means mutualistic, which I've just explained very, very thoughtfully earlier. Maybe you have a better understanding now. Consider 2 ecosystems. One is mountain lake and the other is coral reef. Which statement about interactions in the lake and reef ecosystems is most likely true? I think it is the same for both of them. Which of the following describes a competitive interaction? In a interaction, one organism hunts and eats another organism for its own benefit, then it probably is a predatory or interaction. Alright, so now let's do the applied ecological interactions, which really exciting. Read the passage below, then answer the question. Remoras are fish that have suction cup-like front fins. Remoras use the fins to attach to other animals, including lemon sharks. A lemon shark provides remoras with protection and food. In return, remoras remove parasites from the shark's skin. So as you can see, all these organisms the two organisms, which are remoras and lemon sharks, actually benefit from each other because lemon shark provide warmth and protection for these animals, and these animals in return help the sharks get rid of all the parasites, all the lices, so they are benefiting from each other, right? So it is easily be seen that it is a mutualism. Which of these interactions describes a competitive relationship? When two organisms, maybe from the same population, maybe from a different species, compete with each other for limited resources. A large aphis removing small aphis from the best feeding sites and plant leaves. Box jellyfish and shrimp interact in a marine ecosystem. When the size of the box jellyfish population gets bigger, the size of the shrimp population tends to get smaller. In this case, I think that the box jellyfish actually hunting the shrimp population. I think that is my assumption, but let's continue reading. Yeah, I also think that way. Because literally the shrimp population is declining, whereas the population of the box jellyfish are keeping expanding. So there is something really fishy going on here. It is a predation. Lichens, such as the one shown below, are made up of two organisms, an algae or a fungus. Sorry for my mom's voice. Fungus that make up a lichen cannot survive without each other. It is a mutualistic. Alright. Oh my god, mom had just cooked for me. Oh my god, it's so delicious, guy. Can I just have one bite? Thank you so much for being understandable, because I am literally hungry now. For the morning, I have just had kind of like some kind of bread, and I'm so starving. Thank you so much. Oh my god, monkfish is the best. Wait, let's do this quiz. Sea anemones are predatory animals that use their stinging tentacles to get their prey. I'm so hungry, please. Thank you, mom, for cooking the food for me. I am literally hungry. What is a tundra? I forgot. Maybe it is a species of fish or something. Let me just do some research. Tundra is a type of biome where tree growth. Maybe it is some kind of like geology. A competitive relationship. Bearing acorns. Compete for resources. It is literally competitive. Let's do the final quiz for the whole unit, what we just learned from the beginning of the video to the end. Guys, I am literally hungry right now. Thank you, Mom. I really appreciate that. By the way, this is not a mukbang. I'm just kind of like so hungry that I can't wait until finishing the video to eat that. But yeah, I will stop eating right now because I need to focus on this. It is really important. 10 problems to solve. Death Valley is the driest place in North America. It is also the location of the highest temperature ever recorded in the United States, which was 134 degrees Fahrenheit. The landscape of Death Valley includes sand dunes and sand flats. In these areas, a group of is literally a population to grow much more slowly because there's not resources to support that population's growth. Trapdoor spiders and snakes in right in a forest ecosystem. When the size of the trapdoor spider population gets bigger, yeah, they are predatory. Prey organism is eaten. A population scientist measured the size of a bear population once a year for 6 years. The data is shown in the graph below. It tends to get bigger. Hibernation signs available. Which statement about beavers in a forest ecosystem is most likely true? This is literally a scientific terminology. Pseudomyrmidons, and such as the one shown below, are only found living on acacia trees. These trees provide the ants with food and shelter. The ants protect the trees from herbivores, which would damage and kill the tree if the ants were not there. It is a mutualistic relationship. Organisms that get more resources are more likely. I think these questions are just repetitive and resemble to each other, so also benefits. The graph below shows how the size of a certain population of lionfish has changed over time. 3 points labeled on the graph. I think it is 3 because it is the opposite of the previous question, which I made mistake from. That's it. Thank you so much for joining me this journey where we answer all the questions on this topic. I'll see you in the next video. Bye. Oh my god, so exhausting.